I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Geno TV and Channel 99. With us today is Dylan Fernandes, who is, welcome Dylan.
Thanks for having me.
Dylan is running for state legislature in the Barnstable-Dukes-Nantucket district. One of the people vying to succeed Tim Madden.
Right.
What got you into this?
Well, look, I've long been active in politics and public service. Started out working for Elizabeth Warren over on the South Coast. Then went on to be Maura Healey's political director, the first person hired on her campaign for Attorney General. Then went to the Attorney General's office and worked in civil rights and consumer protection. And when I left that office, I was digital director there, launching campaigns aimed at the State House to move the ball forward on key legislation. So, like Tim Madden when he ran, I'm the only candidate running who's been up there doing the work.
So you think that your experience primarily in a campaign and as an assistant to the Attorney General gives you the experience that the voters should be looking for to support?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you go into the State House, you're one of 160 members up there. And so you're kind of at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
And having worked on campaigns, having worked in government, and having worked in a government role with direct advocacy work geared towards the State House, I've been able to forge relationships with legislators and, more importantly, their staff who have their ear better than anyone else in the State House. And having those relationships is really, really important in being an effective advocate for our local communities and for Nantucket. And like I said earlier, what set Tim Madden apart when he ran was that he worked for years for Eric Turkington, who was the former state rep for 20 years, who's supporting our campaign. And they would both tell you that having that state level experience really important to getting the job done for Nantucket.
What are your priorities if you get elected for this district?
Environmental stewardship is a really central priority to my campaign. We're a district that's going to be disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change. We also have some really...
So you're a believer?
I'm a believer, yeah. The skeptics, I don't even know how to begin with that, but definitely a believer. And water quality issues are huge here. We have an opioid and heroin epidemic that's ravaging our local communities. And we also have a real need for more affordable housing here, because I don't have to tell you that we are importing our workforce because of lack of affordable housing. And a lot of the seniors who helped build our community can no longer afford to live here, and young people and working families are leaving in droves.
Just briefly, because it's a huge issue, but what do you see as a possible solution to help that problem?
Yeah,
at the state level,
Sure.
as opposed to the local level.
The main role of the state representative in affordable housing is securing funding. Is securing state funding, because so often with these projects, there's usually a lot of good ideas, but so often with these projects, it comes down to, is there money to do it? So I think the central role of the state representative is securing state funding. There's also roles when it comes to zoning. And, I'm a believer that zoning should be decided on the local level, but in some cases, we really need to get at higher density affordable housing units, because if we want to preserve the green spaces and the environment that makes this a beautiful place to live.
Which we've done on this island already.
Yeah, and if we want to preserve that, which is critically important, we also need to make sure that we have affordable housing units.
Just to be the devil's advocate for a minute, how can we not preserve it? It's either in the land bank, which requires an act of the legislature to get it transferred out, or it's with the Conservation Commission, Conservation Foundation, which has its mission to preserve open space. So we've got 60% of our land already in, or roughly, some will say 50, but I think it's closer to 60.
And that's why I was talking about higher density units. And when I say that, I don't mean a 1 acre affordable housing house on a plot of 1 acre land. I mean a home with maybe 3 apartments in it.
But isn't this what 40B is essentially intended to do?
No, 40B allows for a certain percentage, it's around 25% of the construction to be, the zoning restrictions are relaxed as long as around 25% of the houses built under 40B are for affordable housing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about units that have, basically a 3-family home to allow people, young people, working families, to have a much more affordable place to live that doesn't take up as much
But
land.
isn't zoning essentially a local issue?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, right now there's a bill in front of the State House that that calls for these higher density units that I'm talking about.
But is that imposed as a 40B kind of thing is imposed?
No, it's set. Well, yeah, it's a state level issue and a state level law, and it basically says they need. It allows for more 3-family units. It also allows for more accessory apartments, something that we've seen growth here on Nantucket and on Martha's Vineyard, and it's a way for seniors to downgrade to a smaller apartment. It also opens up more space for young people, working families. I am a proponent of the municipal level figuring out zoning laws, and that's one thing I don't like about this bill that I'm talking about, because it does impose zoning laws from the state level. But I would rather solve that on the local level.
Yeah, but again, I'm being dense, but I don't understand the basic distinction. 40B is an imposition of certain things. It's not ideal, but it does impose a certain percentage of affordable. We had the whole Atlantic development thing out on Surfside Road, which apparently now is going away. But they originally wanted to build 50 apartments, something like that. And the planning and zoning beat them down to where they ended up with a plan to build 30 single-family ownership units. But there's a local element to this which sort of blocks the intent of the state action, regardless of what it is, regardless of whether it's 3-family homes or whatever it is. You have to somehow get there to be. Ultimately, I think there has to be a partnership between the state and I shouldn't be lecturing you because this is your show, but
no, I agree, and I think when it comes to zoning, the municipal, the views of the municipal association and the community are the most important. But as I talked about before, there are some places in our district that have 3-acre zoning, and so when we talk about affordable housing units and building affordable housing units for working families, our municipal workers, like our teachers and firefighters, who are finding it increasingly hard to live here. And if we want to talk about preserving green space, we need to also be talking about some slightly higher density units when it comes to affordable housing.
Okay. Let's go back to the environmental issue. I am, in the interest of full disclosure, I run the Nantucket Shellfish Association, which is primarily dedicated to the preservation of the bay scallop fishery. The bay scallop fishery in Falmouth is gone. The bay scallop fishery in Martha's Vineyard is really on life support. It's all supported by propagation hatchery. Here, to a degree, it's still self-sustaining. How can the legislature and the state help preserve something or reinvent something for other communities in your district, your prospective district, that is meaningful? What role can the state play in that?
Yeah, well,
should the state play a role?
Well, we've already seen the state play a role in this, and Tim Madden has been a leader on this issue and trying to and securing funds for shellfish propagation across our district. And whoever the next state representative is needs to continue in that leadership.
That I agree with that. That's true, but it's a much more complicated question than just propagation. It's water quality, it's eelgrass, revival in some communities where the eelgrass is essentially gone. Eelgrass is essential to scallops. Can the legislature do things like institute a ban on fertilizers that are harmful to water, whether it be on Nantucket or the Vineyard or in the Berkshires?
Yes, the legislature can do that.
Should it?
And also,
Should
I
it?
mean, yeah, I do think there should be some bans on hazardous material that we use on our lawns and in our on our fields that create damage to our natural environment. And to get back to the shellfish propagation piece, one of the things I was really disappointed at was that Governor Baker actually stripped the funds out of shellfish propagation. It wasn't until the legislature overrode him on that did we get the funds back. And so this is an issue where it's not just about preserving a way of life, and it's not just about recreational fishing. It's also about our water quality. And oysters, as you know, are terrific filters when it comes to getting the nitrogen out of our water. And this is a sustainable and natural way to do it, and something we should be supporting. And I think that's an argument that needs to be made more forcefully at the state level, to say, this isn't just a recreational thing. This is about preserving our water and our environment, and that water and environment here drives our local economy. So I think that's an economic and an environmental issue that we need to be making the case for.
You raise an interesting point, because I was aware of the veto. I had not been able to confirm the fact of the override of the veto by the legislature. Obviously, I'm delighted with that, but the bigger point is communication and knowledge about what's going on in Boston. There's very little.
Yeah.
How can we improve that? How can we make sure people are aware of what's going on up there without them having to go through some obscure website that doesn't make it easy?
Yeah, and in this district, community engagement is especially important because I like to say we're connected by water, not divided by it. But this is a district where constituency services should be the core priority of whoever is the next state representative. In the Attorney General's office, I was part of the working group that made the Community Engagement Division there. And that's a novel division in state government focused on going into the community outside of regular work hours, so after 5 o'clock on the weekends, and reaching out to different communities across the state to let them come voice their complaints to the office. And what we saw is, not only were members of the community allowed to kind of share their concerns, but those concerns raised at those community meetings were used to better inform the work of the office. And so, I've been out here engaging with people quite a bit, and our team has knocked on well over 1,000 doors across Nantucket, and I'm going to continue that community engagement and certainly be here several times a week hosting office hours.
If you're elected, how are you, that was my next question. How are you going to maintain community engagement, whether it be here or in the Vineyard or even at home in Falmouth?
Yeah, well, continuing this kind of having local office hours is really important. And like I said, if elected, I will be here several times a month hosting office hours in a local coffee shop.
You said a week a few minutes ago.
Well, yeah, either one.
That won't work. You'll never make it.
On this campaign, we've been here. We've spent over $1,000 on ferry tickets on this campaign.
That's a whole nother issue.
We have shown a very strong commitment to being here and reaching out to people locally. And as state representative, I'd absolutely continue in that. Yeah.
Would you have a newsletter? I haven't ever seen a newsletter from a.
We do. Yeah, we have.
Would you as representative?
Yeah, we have a kind of bi-weekly newsletter that we send out as a campaign. We also are using social media in really innovative ways to reach out to more people. We're going to continue on that as a good use of a public forum for people to engage with us. When I launched our campaign, in the press release, I put in my personal cell phone number in hopes that the newspapers would run it so that people could reach out to me personally. Only one paper did, the MV Times, over on Martha's Vineyard. And on the front page of my website, my personal email and cell phone number are on there. So I believe, in a very transparent, open, and engaging government, and that's how I've run this campaign, and that's how I'd serve.
We talked about issues a moment ago. There are some the ones you mentioned are to one degree or another common to all the constituencies. Are there any that you see that are specific to Nantucket rather than your other constituencies?
I think there's three issues that are really core. Affordable housing is we're in a housing crisis statewide, but we've been in an affordable housing crisis on Nantucket much longer than the rest of the state has. And we've had an opioid and heroin epidemic crisis on Nantucket a decade before the rest of the state. And my family, my stepfather, Tim Lineweaver, started the first sober house on Nantucket and worked for years here in substance misuse and suicide prevention. And so, you know, I'm very keenly aware that Nantucket has been on the front lines of this devastating epidemic. And I think that's an issue that we're finally seeing some support from the state legislature on. But Nantucket has seen the burden of this long before the rest of the state has. And, you know, as state representative, I think there's more work to be done on this issue.
Okay. What else would you like the community to know about you?
Well, you know, I come from humble beginnings. I'm a fourth generation Falmouth resident, and, you know, my father grew up in really extreme poverty over in East Falmouth, which is outside of the district. Family of 9 brothers and sisters, worked really hard to create...
He's one of 9 brothers.
Yeah. I'm only one of 3. And he worked really hard to create a better life for himself. And, you know, college was never an option for him, but started a small business, worked hard, saw the reward of his hard work.
What's his business?
It's a tree company. It's called General Tree Care. And, you know, he saw the reward of his hard work as I graduated from college. First person from my very large Portuguese family to do so. And so a part of the reason why I'm here today is to give back to the local communities that have given me and my family so much, and that I love and deeply care about.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dylan.
Thank you for having me.
Great
yeah,
to have you.
I hope to
good
come
luck
back.
to you. Your name will be on the ballot next week in the primary.
That's right. It's a Thursday. It's a Thursday.
It is a Thursday.
Yeah.
Gina was right. I thought it was the 6th.
September 8th. I know.
September 8th. That's weird.
Spread the word. It is weird.